In the 16th century, Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Philippines expecting to find primitive tribes. What they actually found terrified them. They discovered advanced kingdoms with sophisticated trade networks, complex political systems, and wealth that rivaled the empires of Asia. But here's what your history book never tells you. These empires were deliberately erased from history. Today, we're uncovering the four kingdoms that ruled the Philippines before colonization. And trust me, their stories will completely change how you see history. The forgotten empires. When we think of ancient empires, Rome, Egypt, China, we picture grand civilizations. We imagine sophisticated cities, intricate politics, and powerful rulers. But when it comes to Southeast Asia, our knowledge is embarrassingly thin. The Philippines, in particular, has been written out of history, and that's not an accident. See, before 1565, when Spanish colonizers arrived, the Philippine archipelago wasn't a collection of primitive tribes. It was home to four major maritime kingdoms that controlled trade routes worth millions in gold, spices, and silk. These weren't small settlements, they were powerhouses. But the Spanish colonizers had a problem. They needed to justify their conquest. So they rewrote history. They claimed the Philippines was uncivilized and needed saving. And for 400 years, the world believed them. Today, that narrative is finally cracking, and we're going to explore the truth. Kingdom 1, Tondo. Let's start with Tondo, arguably the most powerful kingdom in pre-colonial Philippines. Imagine this. It's the 1400s. You're sailing down the Pasig River in what's now Manila. Instead of rice paddies, you see a thriving port city. Merchant ships from China, Japan, and India crowd the harbor. The air smells of spices, salt, and trade. Tondo wasn't just a settlement. It was a trading empire. Its rulers controlled one of Southeast Asia's most valuable trade routes. Chinese merchants had established colonies there. Japanese traders had set up shop. Arab merchants sailed regularly through its ports. The kingdom had a sophisticated political structure. The ruler, called a lakan or datu, governed through a system of barangays, each led by their own chiefs. It wasn't centralized like European kingdoms, but it was effective. Think of it as a federation of city-states, all united under the lakan's authority. But what really made Tondo powerful was its wealth. Archaeological evidence suggests their merchants traded in gold, pearls, and textiles. They minted coins. They had diplomatic relations with foreign powers. When the Spanish arrived, they didn't just conquer a kingdom. They seized a major economic hub. The Spanish even noted in their chronicles how shocked they were. One conquistador wrote, "The wealth here rivals Manila's future prosperity." The irony, they deliberately buried that history to justify their civilizing mission. Tondo was the heart of the ancient Philippines, and it was thriving. Kingdom 2, Cebu. Now, if Tondo was the political center, Cebu was the economic powerhouse of the south. While Tondo controlled the northern trade routes, Cebu's merchants dominated the Visayan seas. Picture a kingdom built on the water, its wealth dependent entirely on seafaring mastery. The Cebu kingdom, ruled by the Datu and later the Raja, controlled merchant routes that stretched from Borneo to the coasts of Mindanao. They were master traders, dealing in the most valuable commodities of their time: spices from Maluku, gold from Sumatra, fine ceramics from China. Here's what makes Cebu's story remarkable. The Spanish knew its power immediately. When Magellan's expedition arrived in 1521, They didn't attack Cebu first. They negotiated. Why? Because Cebu was too wealthy and well-armed to conquer easily. The Raja of Cebu controlled a merchant fleet. He had trade agreements with multiple kingdoms. His subjects were skilled in maritime warfare. Cebu's position was so strong that it took the Spanish over 40 years to fully subjugate the region, far longer than any other Philippine kingdom. But here's the critical part. While the Spanish conquered Cebu politically, they couldn't control its merchant networks fast enough. For decades, Cebuano traders continued operating in secret, maintaining the old trade routes, preserving the old knowledge. Archaeological digs in Cebu have uncovered Chinese porcelain, Indian beads, and Islamic pottery, evidence of a cosmopolitan trading hub that rivaled any port in Southeast Asia. Yet this history was suppressed in textbooks for 400 years. Cebu wasn't conquered because it was primitive. It was conquered despite being incredibly advanced. Kingdom 3. Butuan. While Tondo and Cebu were fighting for dominance in the center, Butuan, on the eastern island of Mindanao, was quietly building something extraordinary. Butuan was the intellectual and cultural capital of pre-colonial Philippines. While other kingdoms focused on trade and politics, Butuan became known for something rarer: knowledge. The Rajas of Butuan were patrons of learning. They preserved manuscripts. They studied the stars. They developed a sophisticated understanding of navigation, astronomy, and medicine. Historians believe Butuan had a written tradition more advanced than most European kingdoms of the same period. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence: the Butuan gold vessels, intricate gold artifacts that archaeologists believe were used for ceremonial purposes and stored sacred texts. The craftsmanship is so precise that when Spanish colonizers first saw them, they thought they were imported from Europe. They couldn't believe they were made locally. Butuan also had something unique: a library culture. Unlike Tondo and Cebu, which prioritized commerce, Butuan's rulers invested in preserving knowledge. We know this from Chinese trade chronicles, which mention Butuan merchants trading in rare manuscripts and scholarly works, not just spices and gold. The most damning evidence of historical erasure? Most of Butuan's written records were deliberately destroyed by Spanish missionaries. Why? Because those records documented a sophisticated intellectual culture that contradicted the savage native narrative the Spanish needed to justify their conquest. If Tondo was the politics and Cebu was the commerce, then Butuan was the soul of ancient Philippines, its center of learning and culture. And it was systematically erased. Kingdom 4, Maynila. Finally, we have Maynila, the kingdom that would eventually become Manila, the capital of colonial Philippines. Here's the thing about Maynila. It was actually a second-tier power during the pre-colonial period. It was overshadowed by Tondo, but its strategic location, at the mouth of the Pasig River, made it incredibly valuable. Maynila was built as a fortress city. Its ruler controlled access to Manila Bay, one of the finest natural harbors in the world. Merchants had to negotiate with the Raja of Maynila to trade safely in the region. It was a kingdom built on geography and power projection. What's fascinating is what the Spanish chose to do. They destroyed Maynila as a kingdom and rebuilt Manila in its place. They literally constructed a new city on top of the old one, erasing its cultural landmarks and replacing them with Spanish colonial architecture. But here's where it gets interesting. Before Maynila was destroyed, Spanish chroniclers documented its sophistication. They noted an organized system of governance, wealthy merchant families, fortified structures, and military capability, trade agreements with foreign powers, a culture and language distinct from surrounding regions. Yet in colonial textbooks, Maynila became the starting point of civilization in the Philippines, as if the Philippines didn't exist before the Spanish arrived. The kingdom wasn't just conquered, it was retroactively erased from history. The Spanish didn't just colonize the Philippines, they colonized Filipino history itself. Why, we forgot. So why don't we learn about these kingdoms in school? The answer is simple, but it's dark. Colonizers control the historical narrative. For 400 years, the Spanish controlled the Philippines, then the Americans. The textbooks taught were their versions of history, versions that made colonization seem like a blessing rather than a conquest. Think about it. If textbooks taught that the Philippines had sophisticated kingdoms, advanced trade networks, and complex political systems, well, how would you justify colonizing them? How would you claim to be civilizing people who were already civilized? So the Spanish burned manuscripts. They destroyed historical records. They rewrote history books. They taught that the Philippines was savage and needed saving. And for centuries, Filipinos themselves were taught to believe that their pre-colonial ancestors were primitive. That's the deepest form of colonization, not just conquering a people, but making them believe their own history was worthless. But here's the beautiful part. That narrative is finally breaking down. Archaeologists, historians, and Filipino scholars are uncovering the truth, piecing together records from Chinese chronicles, Muslim archives, and indigenous sources. And the picture they're revealing is stunning. The Philippines wasn't conquered by superior civilization. It was conquered by superior firepower. And there's a massive difference. These four kingdoms, Tondo, Cebu, Butuan, and Maynila, deserve to be remembered alongside Rome, Egypt, and China. They were sophisticated, wealthy, cultured, and powerful. Their stories are part of human history, and they should be taught in every school. Outro. The real ancient Philippines isn't a hidden mystery. It's been documented in chronicles from around the world. It's buried in archaeological sites across the archipelago. It's preserved in the oral traditions of indigenous communities. We're only just beginning to uncover it. And as more evidence emerges, our entire understanding of Southeast Asian history is shifting. This is why channels like ours exist, to tell the stories that textbooks forgot, to challenge the narratives that colonizers wrote, to reclaim history for the people it actually belongs to. If you found this video as mind-blowing as I did, drop a like, subscribe so you don't miss more forgotten histories, and comment below, which of these kingdoms would you have wanted to visit? What aspect of ancient Philippines intrigues you most? The truth is out there, and it's far more incredible than anything your history book ever told you. Thanks for watching Echoes of the Empires. See you in the next one.